What I think the AQ3D community needs is a 10 to 15 minute video from you, an OG AQ3D player, sharing your entire unbiased opinion in great detail about what you truly believe has happened to this game, its current state, and what AQ3D can do right now to save the game that we all know and love. Please do this for us. You don't even need to read anything from anyone else's thoughts or feelings. Let's just hear it from you directly. A good 10 to 15 minutes. Let this be the true breakthrough that we, the AQ3 community, needs from you right now. Thank you. Another person shared this desire with another person saying he has some recognition from the AE. He would never say anything negative about them. This reminds me of a thread I'd seen on Twitter when Fortnite was having some complications with their servers, and Nick A30 wrote, "Thank you for the update Fortnite win season," with a player saying, "I'm starting to think that if he says one negative thing about the game, he'll be jumped by Epic employees." Like me, Nick A30 is a family-friendly content creator. Unlike me, he focuses on Fortnite, where I focus on AE games. But we're in a similar boat due to the positivity that we focus on within the games that we cover. Before I address the things that I don't like with the game, I need to express first of all why I like the game, but before I even get to that, I also want to mention the reason why we see more negative comments than we do positive comments when it comes to community feedback regarding AQ3D is because when people are unhappy with something, they're more vocal about it. So if you don't like it, we're going to hear about it. Whereas when you're content with something, you don't really say that much. A good example is if you buy an ice cream cone and it's satisfactory, if you enjoy the ice cream, you're not really going to say anything about it. You kind of expected that. But if that ice cream tastes like complete, it's very possible you are going to be vocal about it because you are not happy with the product you received. This is why when I make community videos like this, they are focused more on the negative than the positive, because this is typical of human nature. Minus, of course, the fact that AQ3D is a cross-platform game, which makes it very easy to play even when I'm not at home. I've always enjoyed the graphics of it, even though simplistic. That was part of the charm. Kind of the same reason why I liked AQ World was because of this simplistic style. I am not a big MMO player. The biggest MMO that I've played is RuneScape, and I'm not talking about the new version, the RuneScape 3. I'm talking about RuneScape 2, where the combat was literally click on a monster and then your guy just does all the fighting automatically, basically. Very basic combat. And as for MMOs, AQ3D has very basic combat, which is part of the reason why I was interested in it. Besides, of course, the fact that it was created by Arctic Entertainment, which made other games I already loved, like Dragon Fable and Adventure Quest, and of course, AQ World. I was already familiar with a lot of the NPCs we were introduced to, so right out of the gate, this game already had a lot going for it that I enjoyed. The biggest thing of all was the community. I mean, it was so friendly, unbelievably friendly compared to a lot of other gaming communities out there. Now let's get into some of the things that I hate, and first and foremost, it's scaling. I have never been a fan of scaling ever, and I never will be. The reason why is it doesn't matter how much you tone it down, I am not comfortable with the fact of my power being throttled. The idea behind scaling makes sense, however, because you're trying to match level 2s or level 3s with level 50 content or vice versa. So it kind of adds that little bit of extra challenge, or the fact that you're not able to just stomp on a monster. So I understand the reasons behind it. It's just, it's not functional. It doesn't work well in AQ3D. Now, thankfully, a lot of content recently, because of Clarion, the scaling has been turned down, so you don't get as much scaling content as what we used to get. But the old content suffers greatly. I will use the Mogloween challenge in the haunted house as a perfect example of one of the worst dungeons in the world outside of the Frostvale challenge, which is equally barbaric. There's 1,000 enemies to destroy in each room. They are grossly overscaled. Speaking of dungeons, there are some dungeons that I really don't like because of the challenge level of them. And again, this goes back to scaling largely, but I think the biggest factor, at least for me, is the time invested in that dungeon. For me, a dungeon needs to be within a 10-minute radius. If it takes longer than 10 minutes for me to beat that dungeon, I'm probably not going to run it again. This can cause complications when you have extremely low drop rates in those dungeons, like let's say one of the items is a 0.02%. You have to run that dungeon how many times to get that chance, and the dungeon takes 15 minutes to beat, so how long are you going to be running before you get that drop? This is when it becomes a problem. Our time needs to feel valued in games, and this, especially in this day and age, and this is another problem that AQ3D faces. I also feel like some of the content we get is not based on how much fun is the content. It's more based on how long will this content take to beat, because we're waiting for the next update next week, so it needs to last at least a week long so that there's something to do in the game until the next update. And this is not the best system. I actually love low drop rate items, and the reason why is when you finally obtain that item, there's this level of satisfaction where you're like, finally. But there's a difference between how it's obtained. For example, in AQ World, if I'm farming a certain drop that I want to get and I'm fighting that monster, the respawn times in AQ World is insanely low, so there is no wait time. It might take 100, it might take 1,000 kills, but I'm constantly interacting with the game until I get that kill. And when I finally get the item that I've been going for the last whatever it took to get, I am satisfied because I finally got the item. There was no downtime, there was no frustration outside of the fact, of course, I couldn't get the item. The reward system is higher in AQ World because of the time you invest feels more valued than it does in AQ3D. This goes back to what I was mentioning in regards to the dungeon. If the dungeon takes 15 minutes, but the drop rate in that dungeon is insanely low, I'm probably not going to run that dungeon over and over and over. However, I do like dungeons like the Akraloth Challenge, for example, because number one, it doesn't take nearly as long to defeat Akraloth now. He's got low drop rate items that I can obtain, quite a few, and I can run that dungeon pretty quickly, so it's far more satisfying to do that than running like the Deep Grotto, for example, of a dungeon that I don't like. There needs to be unscaled options for this, and this goes back to another problem. In some dungeons, you can unscale in private mode, but in the recent dungeons, you can't do that, which I have an issue with. I feel all dungeons should have an unscaled option, including old challenges. Now, this also goes for public option. In the public option, you don't have any unscaled option, but I feel there should be an unscaled option for public dungeons, because that way you can group up with just random public players and still obtain what you want without having to deal with the frustration of scaling. Another issue I have problems with is world bosses. And actually, this kind of goes back to the respawn issue I talked about earlier. So basically, respawns. If I have to wait longer than 30 seconds, that's too long for me. It has to be 30 seconds or less, or I've literally lost interest in whatever it is I'm farming. World bosses have always been a bane of my AQ3D existence, and largely because they can take up to 15 minutes, maybe even half an hour before they respawn, which to me made no sense because the majority of players of this game is mobile. So you're sitting there burning up your battery, waiting for this boss to spawn, or jumping to a different server, detaching from either the party you were in, the friends you were with, or the location you were in, to have to run to the location where the boss is again and then re-farm it. Many people might disagree with that, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things I say in this video that many will disagree with. A problem that has been vastly addressed over the last couple years, especially under Clarion's control, has been the inventory issue. Now, there is still inventory issues. Currently, right now, I've seen a lot of complaints regarding the account items because the account items cannot be taken out of your inventory, which can be kind of frustrating for people who want a clean inventory. So I can understand and relate to that. However, the account items actually don't take up any inventory space. Inventory had always been a problem because of the lack of inventory, especially considering how many items you could obtain within one seasonal event, and you wouldn't have enough to store it unless, of course, you had a lot of bank space or bought inventory, which was not an option back in the day. Again, that was something that came in during Clarion's control. So the lack of inventory issue has been greatly adjusted over the course of the last year or the last 2 years and will continue to be addressed. So I would say that issue is no longer an issue, at least not compared to what it was before. Where the game is right now is kind of stuck in a mode where it's transitional. It's still in that transition phase, phasing out of the old AQ3D into the new AQ3D. And I believe this is the current state we are in. There's really not much we can do about that until the new saga has really taken form and started going. In my opinion, they've already taken great strides to make AQ3D feel better. For instance, having another, what is that called? Cross skill that you can put on, another ability to be able to put on your toolbar. Being able to put anything on your toolbar was a huge quality of life difference. As I'd already mentioned earlier, the inventory issue had already been addressed. Another thing that they had done was introduction of housing, and to me, housing has been a huge testament to what AQ3D can accomplish. I mean, if you've seen some of the maps, some of the houses that people have built, it is amazing. This next topic is something that I wasn't really going to address, but the price of items in AQ3D regarding the premium currency Dragon Crystals. Now, the reason why this is kind of controversial is because, number one, it costs a lot to get collections. At 7K, that is expensive, especially considering way back in the day they were nowhere near that price. However, they were kind of lowballing it back in the day as well compared to other games of similar genres. And this game does need funding, so again, that is why it is set at 7K. Another reason why is because most players who play, if you play on mobile anyways, majority of players who play on mobile are able to watch ads to obtain free premium currency. Considering where the majority of the player base comes from, 7K for a bundle does seem rather a little too high. As I've previously mentioned in multiple videos by now, the development team is extremely tiny. I mean, unbelievably tiny, and the amount, the fact that they can put out weekly content still blows my mind. Now, yes, the weekly content we get is very bite-sized, but it's still quite staggering that they're able to do that. Now, I have seen some comments about the developers, personal attacks on the developers, which are uncalled for because the developers are trying their best with the tools that they have. Not every decision they make will be decisions that we like, but the passion that they have for this game has no end. I mean, you have to remember that some of these developers actually started out as Artix Entertainment players. Before I end this video, first of all, I want to thank all of my Raven Squad members. For you guys who are members of my YouTube community, I really appreciate all of your support. Keeps me going. I also want to remind you guys that the developers are real people, and as I did mention in the video, they are trying their best to make a game that will draw people in. This is not only their passion, but this is their livelihood, so they want this game to thrive. I'm sorry I prattled on so long in this video, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.